I'd encourage you, I know you all are always looking for subject matter in this class, and that discussion we had just beforehand, you ought to get a church historian and have some review about how we got to where we are in terms of denominations and all, and all that sort of stuff. It's helpful to know how you got to be who you are. Okay, I am going to cheat today a little bit. Let's see, where did we get? Last week we got Isaac born in chapter 21, and we got the sacrifice of Isaac, and then Sarah dies, and we're to chapter 24 today. Chapter 25 is some genealogies that Genesis puts in. And we're going to deal with, remember I said that the theme here is threat to the promises, and the threat before the midpoint has been, will this baby ever be born? And then when he is, and you think, okay, well, happy ever after. No, Ishmael's around, and Sarah perceives him as a threat, and then God tells Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, and that's certainly a threat. And now we come to the last of the three threats after the birth. And I said I'm going to cheat because we talk about the ancestors of Israel being Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And there is this block of material about Abraham's life. And it follows immediately, Genesis does, with a block of material about Jacob. Isaac doesn't have any story, except to be Abraham's son and Jacob's father. So we're going to cheat, and we're going to take a few chapters here around chapter 26, in which Isaac at least has something to do, sort of. So that we can pay him some attention. What we're going to see is that he's a very passive character. The important people in his life, his mother and father, and his wife and sons, sort of run his life for him. But that's just hard. What can you do? Chapter 24, we're going to get a sense of why. This is one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. I think I've taught this chapter here, maybe not in this class, but at some point I have a vague memory. I teach a course and have written a book on humor in the Bible. And that whole study was born out of this chapter. And after I did it, it's a funny thing, humor in the Bible has become something of a topic in Old Testament and New Testament studies. It hadn't been for centuries. I think we just think the Bible can't be funny. Surely not. It's the Bible, right? After I started, but it's like, after I started studying this stuff, especially Isaac, his name means what? He laughed. And the fact that the Isaac story should have humor in it, when the main character is named, he laughed. Well, I'm surprised now, why we didn't see it before. But here we go. This is the longest chapter in Genesis. It's got 60-something verses. And I'm going to try to do it in about 15 minutes. So, are there seat belts on those things? All right. I'm going to read some. Mostly I'm going to paraphrase because we want to go through this. Now, Abraham was old and well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abram in all things. Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his house, probably Eliezer, who had charge of all that he had, "Put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live, but will go to my country and to my kindred and get a wife for my son Isaac." The servant says, "I can't do that. I can't promise that I'll get a wife. What am I going to do? Go up there if I can't find anybody willing, kidnap somebody? Can't promise. I'll promise to try." And Abraham says, "Good enough." So he swears that he will give it the good old college try to bring back Isaac a wife. To bring back a wife for Isaac. Abraham is sending his servant away to fetch Isaac a wife. Has he talked with Isaac about this? No. What is motivating Abraham? What is the threat to the promise here?
Continuation.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a son now, but that son, how old is this boy? Do we know? Does the text say at this point in time? It doesn't say right here, but we have context that tells us that Isaac was about 40.
About what?
40, 40. Has Isaac shown any interest as far as we can tell from the text? Until then. And Abraham thinks, it's clear, I'm going to have to get this, show on the road because Isaac is, why might Isaac have been passive on this question to this point? What happened in chapter 23? His mother died. Why might Isaac have not felt it necessary? You have any ideas?
When his parents were so old before they died?
I see it on at least one face. What do you think?
I thought he was a mama's boy.
I think that's probably it. Why would he need a wife? His mama, remember how devoted she was to him, right? Okay. And I also wonder if he might not have been a little traumatized by that whole. I mean, I can imagine at points in time. I can imagine Abraham saying, "Son, what are you doing next weekend? I was thinking we might go on a fishing trip." And I can imagine Isaac saying, "Is Mama going with us?" Do you get this in your mind? All right. So the servant goes off to Haran. It's in Syria. That's where Abraham had come from most recently. He started out in Ur of the Chaldees over Mesopotamia, but they had settled in Haran, and that's where he came from, to the Promised Land. And that's where all of his family still was. So this servant goes up there, pulls into town. And this is already a funny thing to me. The servant gets there and sort of comes up to the center of any village or town in those days will have been the well. So he pulled up to the well. Got 10 camels with him loaded down with stuff. And he pulls into the well and he goes, how am I going to go about this, right? Am I going to put up an ad, take an ad in the paper? Nobody's invented papers yet. Facebook's not around. Am I going to nail up a poster right here by the well and say, Abraham's servant looking for pretty, smart young lady to be Isaac's wife. I know you don't know Isaac. I know you don't know me, but this is a great opportunity. He says, Lord, I tell you what, let the woman who, when she comes to the well and I ask for a drink, she gives me a drink and she offers to water the camels. Let that be the one. Now, sometimes I tell people, if you really want to study the Bible carefully, ask some questions. I mean, this is said in a cultural context that is not ours. I know nearly nothing about camels, except that I've seen them on television. Right. So, what would be entailed in watering a camel? Turns out they can drink, they drink about 40 gallons in a sitting. Times 10 is 400 gallons of water. And what do we know about how wells were constructed? I mean, don't think about what you think of as a well. They dug down a little bit because of the heat and stuff. They would want to cover it to preserve water. So she's going to have had a flight of steps to go up and down. And the watering trough will be up on the ground level. 400 gallons. She will probably have had a what? How many gallon jug?
5 gallons.
Oh, 5 gallons at 40 pounds. Well, I don't know. She's going to haul, by the way, 10 times 40 is 400. 400 gallons of water weighs about 1.5 tons. Right? And then this man has said, let the young woman who offers to water offering to water those camels, how many trips with a 5 gallon? That's 80 trips. The whole 1.5 tons. How many young women are going to volunteer to do that? Not many. Along comes Rachel. She's pretty and smart. By the way, I wrote an article about this some years ago because I was surprised by it. It's a standard. It's a fixed phrase in the Bible. Pretty and smart, or handsome and smart. And it only applies to about 6 people in the whole Bible. She's one of them. Joseph is one of them. David is one of them. David's daughter Tamar. Anyway, it always is a precursor to trouble. She's pretty smart, and he says, "Could I have a drink of water?" She says, "Yeah, and I'll water your camels too." The Bible says he sat there and watched her do it to see how it was going to come out. The Bible says she did it hurriedly. Now, in Genesis 24, every time Rebecca does something, just about it, the author adds the adverbial expression, "in a hurry," right? So she doesn't piddle. She does things quickly. So she waters his camels, and he sits there and watches that process to see how it come out. And he thinks, man, she's pretty and she's smart and she's a hard worker. This is great. So he tells her who he is, and that, by the way, he needs a place to stay that night. And she says, "You can come on over to my house." He said, the text says he gives her a bunch of nose rings and ankle bracelets. I don't know how you think of the ancient Israelite. I remember some years ago, my children were still home. They brought home a little pamphlet from Sunday school showing when Isaac and Rachel first met. And they looked like Mr. and Miss local high school at the homecoming. You know, they were just white, clean, you know, like that. She would have been dark, swarthy, and she would have tinkled when she walked. Because she would. Have you ever seen pictures of the Bedouins from certain parts of Yemen and around there where the wedding? Think of that. So, turns out she is Isaac's first cousin. And her father's dead, but her brother Laban is still alive, and he's the head of the household. So they go to his house. And one of the reasons this story is so long, and it's part of the technique of the storytelling, when they get there, by the way, Eliezer, or whoever who this servant is, hasn't revealed yet to Rebecca. I said Rachel, that was wrong. Rebecca, what he's about. And so Laban, because of hospitality rules in those days, Laban first helps him get settled in. And then he says, "Oh, by the way, who are you?" And he said, "Oh, that's a good question, let me tell you." And rather than saying, as we might do, so the servant told him the whole story. And no, the biblical author tells the whole story again. The biblical author said, "Well, Abraham called me in and he said, I want you to swear to go." And I said, "I can't swear." I said, I swear to try." And so he said, "That's good." So then I loaded up the 10 camels, and then I came into Haran, and I said, "Now I'm going to know how to do this." So I prayed the Lord to God. And then Rebecca came out, and she watered the oil in a big hurry. And then I said, "Well, I got to need a place to stay." She said, "Come over to my house." And now here I am. So that's 20 verses to say, you could have said, "And he told the story." But no, tell the whole thing. There are some slight variations that are significant if we were going to get into detail, but we're not going to. So here we are. So the servant says, "Now you know why I'm here. You know where I came from. What I want to know is, I prayed to the Lord to send me a woman who would water the camels, and she did. So I want to know if I can take her back to be Isaac's wife." And Laban says, "Well, what are you asking me for? Sounds like you and the Lord have it all worked out in advance. I'm not too pleased about this, but what am I going to do?" And the servant said, "And I'd really like to leave tomorrow morning." And Laban said, "Well, this is kind of, this is new to us. You just got here, and we'd like to at least have a little while to have a farewell party and get used to the idea. What's a week going to cost?" And the servant said, "Well, I'm afraid Abraham may die before I can get back home, and I want him to know that I've got this taken care of." By the way, Abraham does not die. In chapter 25, he marries a woman named Keturah and has 6 more sons. This is typical of the patriarchs. They think, "Oh, I'm getting old." But I'm not that old. I could probably handle another wife. So anyway, Laban says, "Well, let's ask her." And so they ask Rebecca whether she's willing to pack up and go the next day, and she answers how? Yes. Hurriedly. She does everything hurriedly. And she says yes. And so they unload the camels. That will be the bride price or the dowry, and leave that with the family, and then load all her stuff, the text says, onto the camels, and they head out. Now, I've gotten us for almost to verse 60 of a long chapter, and I'm going to read, I can turn over there, verse 62. out of 60, what is it, 7 verses. That's a long stuff. Where does, in any story, where's the point? It's in the end. So we've gotten here now to the 62nd verse. And I should just go ahead and tell you, I was teaching undergraduates, honors students, 20 years ago plus. When I got to this point and just broke out laughing and had to stifle myself because I didn't think it looked good for the professor in the honors class to be laughing at the Bible, especially when I wasn't sure why, you know. And I took it back to my office and made some notes, and that's over several years later. That was a course in a book. But I'm going to pay very careful attention here. Now, by the way, this chapter is almost like a perfect specimen for how to read the Bible. Now, Isaac had come from Beer Lahai Roi and was settled in the Negev. Sometimes we say the Negev desert, except in the south, except the word Negev means southern desert. So that's like the Potomac River. You know what Potomac means? River. And the Rio Grande River is the big river. Anyway, I get tickled by these. Isaac went out in the evening to walk in the field, the RSV says, and looking up he saw camels coming. If you have a Bible and you want to look there, there'll be a note at the bottom, and it says, meaning of Hebrew word is uncertain. It's what we call a hapax legomena. It's a word that appears one time in the whole Bible. And if you have a word that appears one time, then you don't know what it means. Right? He went out to do something in the field in the evening, and when he looked up, he saw the camels coming. What did he go out to do? Well, Hebrew is a Semitic language, and there are other Semitic languages, and whereas this word only occurs once in the Hebrew Bible, a word that appears to be a cognate appears in several other Semitic languages. And we know what those words mean. And they mean to urinate. Yeah. I mean, why do you get up and go out into the field if you're living in the Negev in the evening? That's a good way to get snake bit or eaten by a lion. What would prompt you to get up from your nice, warm, safe tent and go outside in the evening? Nature. Now, it's very important. Am I saying that's what this word means? I don't know. We don't know for sure. But boy, it doesn't seem to be. So he's out taking care of things, and he looks up, and now why are they still coming? Why didn't they spend the night somewhere? Well, apparently they'd gotten this close to home. I can imagine the conversation. Somebody says to Eliezer, or whoever was in charge, it's getting about time to make camp, and he says, I know where we are. I know this area. We've only got another hour or two, and we'll be home. Well, let's push on rather than camp out just this close to home. Okay, so it's not dark yet, or else, you know. So you get the image. It's dusk, and you can see the outline. And this is when I started laughing. And Rebecca looked up, and when she saw Isaac, it's still funny to me. It's still funny. The translations always try to smooth this out. The word is nafal. In Hebrew, that means to fall off of. She quickly, and she does everything quickly, she quickly fell off the camel. Many translations will say dismounted rapidly or something like that. That's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says she just fell clean off the thing. And that's what I want to know why. And she said to the servant, who is the man, why did she fall off the camel, do you think? I mean, you get the image? There, Isaac looks up and sees them, and she looks up and sees him. Whatever it is he's doing in the field. And plunk, she just falls off again. Why? I can think of a couple of reasons. One of the things I encourage people to do, especially when you're reading narrative, especially if it has dialogue in it, I'm going to read the next. She says something and the servant says something back. I'm going to read it 3 ways, okay? I'm going to read it the way preachers usually read it. And one of two other ways that would account for why she was so moved as to fall, is just to fall off. All right, you ready? The preacher was. And Rebekah looked up, and when she saw Isaac, and she said to the servant, "Who is the man over there walking in the field to meet us?" And the servant replied, "It is Isaac, my master." You know, that doesn't convey any information. How about this? Who is that man over there? And the servant said, "My master." "You bet it is." Or she said, "Who is that man over there?" "Who is that man?"
What's he doing else?
And he said, "Well, I'm afraid that's my man." Now, if she said, "Who is that guy?" Why did she fall off the camel? Ladies?
She was smitten.
Yeah, she liked what she said. What if she said, "Who is that guy?" Then why did she fall off the camel?
She fainted.
Well, why did she fall off the camel then? Because she saw a 40-year-old already balding a little bit, polishing mama's boy? And she thought to herself, "Do you want to go back with me?" "Yeah," I said hurriedly. "You want to leave tomorrow?" "Yes," I said hurriedly. Hurriedly. Rebecca, stupid. Should have asked for a photo. Oh, they don't have photos. Should have said, "I'll marry him when they invent photography." You know? You didn't tell me he was 40 years old. You didn't tell me he was 20 pounds, 40 pounds overweight. You didn't tell me he was balding already. Which one was it, do you think?
The lad.
Well, we don't know, except we're not finished with the story yet, and there are some more clues to come. So, she took her veil and covered herself. This doesn't make any sense to me. Whatever we think we know about ancient Israelite society, sometimes we're wrong. She had been traveling in the company of men all this time without wearing a veil, and now she's about to meet her fiance and she puts a veil on. I can't figure this out, and when I do, I'll come back and tell you, but I haven't figured it out yet. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. That's verse 66. We're still not to the end. Verse 67. Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent. He took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Still not to the end. So, last sentence. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Mama's dead, you know. The king is dead, long live the king. Mama's dead, long live mama. You all aren't reacting the way I want you to. Students always ask me, is it common in ancient Israel that you spent your honeymoon night in your mother's bedroom? And the answer is no. Students will say, isn't that a little bit weird? And the answer is yes. As weird then as it would be today. What has just happened? Rebekah has just taken Sarah's place.
Yes.
Wholly and entirely. Why did she fall off the camel? Not because she saw a hump. She saw a mama's boy, 40 years old, never married, didn't even go to the high school prom. Have you got a picture of who Isaac is? Who is going to wear the robe in this family? I just imagine she's thinking, hurriedly, you do everything hurriedly. Look what you've got now. Well, at least he's not going to give me any back talk. At least I'm going to get my way. Let's pause for just a second. Because I think it's terribly important to think about what it is to read Scripture. I mean, we come to this chapter fascinates me. We come to Scripture sometimes thinking we're going to be encountering you know, these sort of earth-shakingly essential theological / philosophical statements of, this is a very human story, isn't it? Something like it will happen in Richmond today, won't it? Only involve camels, and it might not involve, you know, urinating in the field, but there will be some kind of mama's boy, you know. I tell my daughter, I have one daughter, 3 sons, I tell her that if you're interested in a fella and he's not a mama's boy, go on, leave. He's not worth dealing with. Unless he's too much of a mama's boy, and then leave him. No, he's not worth dealing with, you know, because they're all mama. This fella, how did he end up this way? Well, Sarah was willing to run off everybody, wasn't she? Abraham obeyed the Lord and took him up the mountainside to sacrifice him. I can imagine that this was one screwed up dude. Can't you? How far back does human dysfunction and family dysfunction go?
How old was Rebecca? 12?
We don't know, but I would say probably more like 15 or 16. Yeah, probably more like 15 or 16.
And to ask the obvious, we're dealing with a lineage through a lineage through a lineage. I mean, it's just picking up the one key person per
right.
generation.
Well, except
Because there are multiple marriages and multiple
except for the
offspring.
genealogies, we always hear about them, but we are following the direct line. We're interested in getting to Jacob especially, who has the 12 sons who become the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's where we are going. We are noting that there are sidelines from time to time, but we're not following any of their stories. We know who they are. And then they're all, well, I say this is not, in the first instance, theological literature, is it really? Except that it is, in that we're hearing the story. These are the ancestors of Israel, and we're finding them to be as human and as foible-ridden as you and I are, aren't we? Please.
Since the author seems to put so many details
Right.
in, and some of them may be, I mean, most of them are very important, but on the putting curvail on.
Right. That would have meant something to people who knew what that meant, but we don't know what that means.
Well, I was just thinking if she fell off the camel.
Maybe it fell off.
Yeah.
Well, that's possible.
Broke her neck.
That's why, yeah, that is possible that the veil fell off when she fell off the camel. I hadn't thought about
Maybe
that.
it's better to conceal than reveal.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, it could be in contrast to him, right? Yes.
Was it common to marry first cousins?
No. No, it was not. This betrays an Israelite interest, at least when it looks back to its origins. And this is common among a lot of, if you think of, and I'm going to use a word here, no, I won't use that word because it'll be, no, I'm going to use it. I don't mean it in the way we normally use it, but in the ancient world, every ethnic group, every nation had a myth of their origins, right? The story that Romulus and Remus, you know, on and on. And it's very common in all of those kinds of stories, the world over, for these stories to emphasize the purity of the line, right? And so this remarriage back into the same family is an effort to emphasize how very Israelite we are, right? We don't have anything but Israel. And as a matter of fact, Esau marries a Canaanite, and that's a big deal is made out of that, and a Hittite. And Ishmael marries, you know, and that's part of what makes them not quite the right line, right? Because they married, and they didn't marry as cleanly, as purely as these people. Yeah.
Would Rebecca have been one of the daughters that Laban offered in Sodom What?
No, you get all this all confused. That was not Laban, that was Lot.
Lot.
And Laban is Abraham's.
Nephew.
Laban and Lot would have been, wait a minute,
That's his nephew.
would have been his nephew. Yeah, Lot was Abraham's nephew. Laban will be Abraham's nephew too, by a different one of Abraham's brothers. Gosh,
Oh,
it's
okay.
just really, yeah, it's very complicated. It's like, you have to, it makes me think of my grandmother explaining to me all the family relationships in my family, and I get confused. So, I mean, this is just powerful literature to me. The kind of, I mean, let's pause here and look forward. When you have a fellow like Isaac, who has, I think, a truckload of psychological issues to deal with, what kind of father do you think he's going to be?
Weird.
What kind of husband? Yeah, what kind of husband do you think?
Weird.
So, as we move forward, by the way, in chapter 25, ever so often in this construction of Genesis, you have to put a paragraph to deal with some by-the-way stuff, and another paragraph to deal with, and then get back to the story. So, chapter 25 tells us Abraham marries Keturah, and then it tells us he died. She must have been something. And it tells us that Ishmael and Isaac buried him. And then it tells us about Ishmael's descendants. And now we come to the birth of Esau and Jacob. And really, if, I'm going to flip the page, really I would say that in chapter 25 here, we're already done with Abraham, and it's not really the Isaac story. We've already begun the Jacob story, right? But I'm going to cheat and let Isaac have a little more time on the stage. Let's read. I want to read this, and it'll be enough. These are the descendants of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Paddan Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramean. Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. All right, get that again. Second generation. And the Lord granted his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, if it's to be this way, why do I live? She had twins, and they were fighting in the womb. And she said, this is rough. I'm not enjoying this. So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger, which is backwards. When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body a hairy mantle, so they named him Esau, which means something like hairy. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand gripping Esau's heel, which in Hebrew is Yaakov, so he was named Yaakov, Jacob, which is also very close to a Hebrew verb, which means to cheat, to con, to defraud. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. That's 20 years after they married. So why did Jacob have Esau by the heel? Jacob already was trying to be born first. You get back in here, I'm coming out. And when the Hebrew Bible tells a story like this, the name Jacob jumps off the page. He's grabbing his brother by the heel. His name almost means, in the way it sounds, just very nearly, to cheat. He's trying to cheat his brother. Oh, we got trouble, buddy. We got trouble. And this is how the story goes. They're grown. In verse 27, they're grown already. Verse 26, they're born. Verse 27, they're grown men. We can only imagine what their upbringing would have been like. By the way, we are told very soon, I don't think it's here. Yeah, it is. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, living in tents. Isaac, the mama's boy, Sissy, loved Esau because he was fond of game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. That's all we need to know. Right? Can you imagine Isaac, who didn't go to the high school prom, when he saw Esau? I always think of Esau as driving a GMC truck with a rifle, with cages for coon dogs in the bed of the truck, and wearing a red man ball cap, right? Chewing tobacco. And he probably played middle guard on the high school football team. You got that? Defensive position. Maybe middle linebacker. I don't think of Esau as being that agile. Jacob, on the other hand, was the president of the National Honor Society and founder of the literary magazine. Right? He liked to cook, which is the next thing that comes along. He and his mother would watch Emerald Lagasse on television. Do you get this? Yeah. And so when Isaac looked at them, Isaac said, Esau, chip off the old block. But that's what Isaac probably liked to tell himself. Right? So do you see the Bible tells, I told you that, I want to reiterate it. The biblical storytellers don't waste any words. These two verses, we know all we need to know about the dynamics in this family. We can fill it all in, can't we? Just think about that bookish, quiet, right? We're going to learn later that Esau was hairy and Jacob was a smooth man, as King James put it. One of my favorite references. He was and smooth. The King James says he was and smooth man. So two big things happen, and we're going to. Since we're running out of time, and we're going to finish. We're going to finish what little bit of Isaac there is with the first two major events, in what are going to be contests between Jacob and important people in his life. If his name means to connive, to defraud, to cheat, there are going to be these contests in which Jacob's intention is going to be to get the upper hand, right, over somebody. And the first candidate is, of course, Esau. And you know what happens. The first thing he does is to buy, under suspicious circumstances, the birthright, the right of firstborn from Jacob. Esau had been out hunting to no avail. And Jacob, meanwhile, was back in the camp cooking up a pot of, must have been lentil soup. Esau refers to it. And remember, Esau is the ancestor of the Edomites, and Edom in Hebrew means red, or red clay. And he's ruddy complected himself. So there's always, every time you read about Esau, there's a play on hairiness or on being red, like as in redneck, always a play on his being red. And when Esau comes in from hunting without having been successful and finds Jacob cooking up this pot of something, Esau says, give me some of that red stuff. That's a direct, literal translation of the Hebrew. I want some of that red stuff. And I can imagine Jacob saying, red stuff? Why, this is lentil soup au gratin with what are you talking about, red stuff? I've been working on this all morning. I had to trade some lentils for some leeks with the people halfway over in order to do this right. You poor. You can have some of my stew for your birthright. And Esau said, well, I'm starving to death, so I don't guess having a birthright is going to do any good if I starve to death. So yeah, I'll take some of the soup. And then to break the thing up, chapter 26. We have to give Isaac something to do on his own. So Isaac and Rebekah leave to go to Gerar, and he says, she's not my wife, she's my sister, you can have her. And so we have that third of the endangered ancestors triplets. So Isaac can have something to do all on his own. And we come back to the Jacob story. The next thing that happens is after the purchase of the birthright is, do you remember? Jacob buys the birthright. What does he do next? He steals the blessing. Isaac says to Esau one day, he says, I'm old and I'm going to die soon. No, but that's what he says. I want you to go out hunting and make some game, bring in some game like I love, and let's have some venison stew or something. And we'll have that meal together, and I will give you my special blessing. Rebekah overhears, and she says, you think. She calls Jacob and says, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to slay an animal from the flock and use a lot of herbs in it and make it taste game. And your daddy can't see so good. You're going to wear a fur coat, and we're going to steal this. And Jacob says, well, what if it makes Dad mad and he curses me after he finds out about this? She says, don't you worry about it, son. I'll take care of it. So that's what they did. You know this story. That's what they did. Jacob comes in, and Isaac says, well, the voice is the voice of my son Jacob, but you're awfully hairy. So I guess you must be Esau's who you say you are. And the blessing is what's important. The smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Now, I want to remind you, this is Isaac's blessing. This is not God's. Okay, there is a little difference. No more than that is said, and in comes Esau. And Jacob says, oh my goodness, I want to read this. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out of the presence of his father Isaac, his brother Esau came in from his hunting. He also prepared savory food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, let my father sit up and eat, and so forth. He said, who are you? Esau. Esau trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him? Yes, and blessed he shall be. When Esau heard his father's words, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, bless me also, father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully, your brother came Jacobly. Do you know that passage in the New Testament? Jesus says of, who was it, Nathaniel, one of the disciples? Behold, an Israelite in whom there is no guile. Behold, an Israelite in whom there is no Jacob. Right? And he has taken away your blessing. Esau said, is he not rightly named cheat, Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. Now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? I mean, this is poignant literature. A father and the son says, you only have one blessing for your children? You can only bless one of us? Whoa, boy, that if I were preaching today, instead of teaching this course, if it were anywhere near Father's Day or Mother's Day, but especially Father's Day, I would go on for about 30 minutes. This is the worst crime a parent can commit. Having only one blessing to give out. Isaac relents. Have you only one blessing, Father? Bless me also. Then his father Isaac answered him, boy, is this ominous. See, away from the fatness of the earth shall your home be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you break loose, you shall break his yoke from your neck. Ooh. Some years ago, when I was teaching undergraduate, one of my colleagues, Old Testament, came in. He came into my office as excited as he could be. He had just been contacted by some national group. They were having a conference on parenting, and they wanted him to do a whole panel session series for 1,000 people, you know, that kind of deal, on Old Testament models of parenting, fatherhood. And he said, man, this is great. This is a wonderful opportunity. I said, it'll be good for you. And he went down the hall, and I thought, I wonder how long it'll be before he's back. And sure enough, about 30 minutes later, he came in and slumped down in the chair, and he said, there are no good models. A fatherhood in the Old Testament. Abraham nearly sacrifices his son. Isaac plays favorites. Jacob, good Lord. All right, I want to tell you what's coming, and then we're going to entertain it until we're told that we're out of time, and I've lost sense of it. I'm going to outline for you.
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
Okay, really quickly what's coming up. It's going to be a series of things, usually twos, but not always. 2 contests. Start the thing out between Jacob and his brother. He's going to have to leave and go back to Haran because Esau decides, in a minute, Esau says, Dad's gotten old, and when he dies, I don't see why we just don't have a double funeral that day. So Rebecca hears him say that, and she tells Jacob, you got to get out of here, buddy. Why don't you go back to Haran and see if you can get a wife. So there are going to be 2 contests with Laban over wives and flocks. Then there's a break. Jacob marries sisters. They are Laban's daughters, his mother Rebekah's cousins, his cousins. We're going to find out that this frauding, cheating, deceiving way of doing things, where did Jacob learn it from, by the way? His mother. She was the one who had the idea to steal the blessing. Where do you think she learned it from? Laban. We're going to find out that he's good, right? So when Jacob marries 2 of his daughters, who are also her nieces, guess what? They get into a contest over having babies. And we're going to spend a whole chapter. And in that chapter, 12 of Jacob's children will be born. And he's like a ping pong ball, getting bounced right back and forth between the line. Now, I forgot to mention, right here, between these 2, God. This is Jacob leaving. By the time we get here, he has another contest with Laban, and they part company angry with each other, and I haven't made my chart big enough, because we're going to go down like this, and then we're going to go up like this, and we're going to end up back with Jacob and his brother again. And that's scary business if you're Jacob. We're going to see that he takes advantage, and he tries to manipulate, and he takes advantage, and then his wives turn out to be just like him. He has so angered Laban that their relationship is over. How about he and Esau? We find out, by the way, and the blessing was that you'll live by the sword. We find out that Esau has an army of 400. And he and Jacob are about to meet by the time the end of the thing's over with. And then Jacob has his last contest with God. You can imagine, we're going to take 2 weeks to do this. Next week, we'll get to the sister contest. Let them battle it out some. That's quite humorous. And then we'll see how Jacob extricates himself, or tries to, from having alienated everybody in his life who should have meant something to him by one-upping. Right. Now, 2 minutes probably. Questions or comments? Please.
The blessing of the eldest son.
Yeah.
That was general protocol for that society, was it not?
Except, but you're not supposed just to bless the oldest son. When Jacob himself dies, he blesses all 12 of his sons. Right. When Moses dies, he blesses all 12 of the tribes. I mean, that whole question of, do you only have one blessing, is a poignant one, and I think it is an important one for parents to think about, right? When Jacob blesses his 12 sons, he has a unique blessing for each one of them that seems to fit their personalities and pursuits in life and who they are. A generic blessing won't work, right? But the notion that you just have one as a parent, that's pretty...
Well, why did Isaac just give one?
Well, he ended up giving 2, but Esau had to more or less demand that he do so. More or less demand. And what happens is it backfires on Jacob also. He thought he was blessing Esau. Jacob had already bought the birthright, was clearly getting a hand up from Rebekah. And so when Isaac blessed Jacob, he thought he was blessing Esau.
Yeah.
And so he gave him a blessing that would have put Jacob in the, subservient role. And it backfired on him because he ended up blessing the wrong son. Yes.
I heard once that the Hebrews consider a statement to be very sacred, and once you've said those words,
You can't
take them
no,
back.
you can't take them
So
back.
there was no way that he could.
Undo it, no.
Yeah.
No. That's what he said. I blessed him, yes, and he shall be blessed.
Time frame BC on this.
We have no idea. A lot of ink and archaeology has led us nowhere on that question. Sometime before 1200 BCE. How much before? No, we have no idea.
Would it have just been a change in birthright and age and years that have gone by that allowed the blessings for many sons that was not available?
No, I think this is a shortcoming on Isaac's part.
Okay.
I think Isaac made it was. I think Isaac and Rebekah were both, if you analyze this in family dynamics, they were playing favorites, and it was backfiring right and left, and the damage being done was to the boys. Yes.
The blessing, I assume, was in lieu of a will. If you got the blessing, you inherit it.
If you had the birthright, we aren't clear on this entirely, but ancient Israel did operate on the principle of primogeniture. The firstborn inherit either everything or most of it, and we're not sure because the texts are not clear. But you didn't have to have a will. That would have been just the way it went, right? The oldest son would have gotten most everything. Now, daughters were a problem. You know the story about Zelophehad's daughters in Numbers and in Joshua? Zelophehad had no sons, and the daughters came to Joshua, I think it was, or Moses. Joshua came to both of them at some point and said, how's this going to work? And Moses and then later Joshua said, yeah, you guys should probably inherit. That would be fair. But it wasn't, the standard was that a firstborn son got all or most. We're out of time.
Yep.
And so next week it gets interesting.
Unlike this one.